Hello, everyone. I am Mrs. Parson, and I am the Assistant Superintendent for the Hopkinton Public Schools. I'm happy to be here today joining you for another fireside chat. This is an initiative that was put together by the Hopkinton PTO in honor of a day that we'll be celebrating very soon, which is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And this is a day where we honor the work of this very well-known person in our nation's history. This book that I'm going to be reading to you today, called Let the Children March, is written by Monica Clark Robinson and illustrated by Frank Morrison. What I'd like you to think about as I read this book today is some of the challenges that were felt in our nation over the years. This book goes back in history to a time in 1963 to an event called the Children's Crusade, which was a group of children who, with the support of their families and Dr. Martin Luther King, decided it was time to make a statement about their the pain and challenges that were caused by what we refer to as segregation, which is the idea that at this period in time, Blacks and whites were not afforded the same types of experiences and were not able to do things at the same time and in the same way. So, for example, there were separate restaurants for Blacks and whites, separate drinking fountains in schools for Blacks and whites. And there was an outpouring of support for what we call that segregation. And these children and their families decided that they had had enough and they would not be silent anymore. And they were prepared to speak their voices and participate in what we would call a peaceful protest. And this is the story called Let the Children March. "1963, Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. One warm spring night, my family went to church. We weren't there to have regular services. We were there to hear Dr. King speak. We were there to plan. He wanted to raise an army of peaceful protesters to fight for freedom. His brown eyes flashing fire and love, Dr. King told us the time had come to march. If I march, Mama said, I'll lose my job, sure enough. I can't march, Daddy said. I've got a family to feed. The weight of the world rested on our parents' shoulders, but this burden, this time, did not have to be theirs to bear. I don't have a boss to fear, my brother said, or a job to lose. We can march this time. We'll be Dr. King's army, I said. I'll be fine, Daddy, I promised. Don't worry, Mama. Dr. King didn't like children being put in harm's way. He was a daddy too, after all. But he said that he thought we were young, but we were not too young to want our freedom. Let the children march. They will lead the way. On May 2nd, a sunny Thursday, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, we all met at the church, dressed in our best, feet ready. In a silence so loud that all I could hear was my racing heart, we began to walk. Hand in hand we marched, so frightened, yet certain of what was right for freedom. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm going to walk on. Would I be hurt? Would we be heard? Would it all be worth it in the end? I wanted to run from the angry faces in the crowd, run from danger, run from fear. Boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, on and on we marched. We marched. We marched. Singing the songs of freedom, 1,000 strong we came. Hate dogged my heels all that day, its yellowed canine teeth sharp, but courage walked by my side and kept me going. Disperse or you'll be jailed, the police shouted the first day. Disperse or you'll get wet, the police shouted the second day. Disperse or we'll release the dogs, the police shouted on the third day. We did not disperse. We kept on marching. We would not stop until things started to change. Hundreds of us went to jail on the first day, and even more on the second. My turn wasn't until the third day. After I was sprayed by water stronger than anything I've ever felt, rough hands pushed me forward and I fell to my knees in the police wagon. I was going to jail. Dr. King reassured our parents. Don't worry about your children, he said. They're going to be all right. Don't hold them back if they want to go to jail, for they are doing a job for not only themselves, but for all of America and for all of mankind. That night, crowded into a cell too small for even half of the kids, we sang, "We shall overcome, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, and freedom is coming." Our parents couldn't be there with us, but we still sang, wrapped in the proud and loving arms of our ancestors. I was still in jail, but we heard that the next day and the next, more kids marched. The water hoses they used to sting us could not stop our fierce tide. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm gonna walk on. Turn the other cheek, we'd been taught. Show love where there is hate. The world watched as hate bruised us, but for 7 days we walked only in love. The jails swelled to bursting, and even President Kennedy took notice. Daddy said the president received letters and calls about us from all over the world. Our march would become a memory, a small part of a larger story. But we had been heard, and the seeds of revolution were sown. 2 days and nights I stayed in the jail. Some stayed even longer. When I left, I was tired and sore, and my best dress was ripped, but my smile was as wide as the Mississippi River. I had made a difference. I am so proud of you, baby girl, Mama said. Your march was what made them see. With nothing more than our feet, voices, and courage, we had done what others could not. Change was right around the corner. We felt it like a cool breeze in an Alabama August. On May 10th, the great news rang out. Dr. King had reached an agreement with the white leaders of the city. Desegregation would begin. 1 month later, I was playing on a playground I'd never been allowed to play on before. 2 months later, my family ate at a diner we'd never been allowed to eat in before. Our march made a difference. We children led the way, singing the songs of freedom. 1,000 strong we came. And that brings us to the end of our story today. I hope that that this story gave each of you some things to think about. Certainly the topic of courage is a big one, not letting hate lead the way, and the idea that all of us, if we choose to, can make a difference. Certainly the children in this story had to endure an awful lot. They actually spent time in jail, as you'll remember from the pages I just read to you. You may want to think about, while that is certainly an extreme, some things that you may be able to do, especially as we think about the legend of Dr. Martin Luther King and the work that has come before us and the work that we have ahead of us in our nation. What are some things that you may be able to do in order to make a difference in your life, in your family, in your community of Hopkinton, and in the world? Thank you everyone for listening today. It's been a pleasure spending time with you. Take care.